Hello everyone, it's Tania Gabrielle here, Wealth Astro-Numerologist. Welcome to Star Codes, where we look at the stars and numbers, the astrology and numerology forecast for the next period of time. In this case, we're going to look at September's 14 universal month number because it is so activated. It actually started activating in August, and this number, which reduces to 5, 1 plus 4 equals 5, ties in to 2021, the whole year. 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 1 also equals 5. So 5 is the number of risk, adventure, change, freedom. You get the drift. And we're going to dive deeply into what is going on in the codes and how to be able to handle the change, the shift, the transformation energy that's so deeply in play now, where really anything goes. The excitement level is through the roof, basically. And when we add the astrology with Uranus and Aquarius and all the wonderful synchronistic lineups, it can't get more exciting in many ways, but also, you got to be open to really be flexible at this point. So we're in the midst of an incredible flow of changes that has been reflected in the stars and numbers all year, but has really ramped up in August, and now in September comes to a crescendo, which will basically coast us through the last 4 months of the year. Now, let me start with the fact that Uranus stationed retrograde on August 20th at 14 degrees in Taurus. And it did so between 2 Aquarius full moons, which is very important because Uranus rules Aquarius. So the number 14, which is about risk and change and freedom, Uranus and Aquarius are about the same thing: freedom, openness, adventure, exploration. And so we had this star code really birth the theme of tremendous shifts and unexpected events and surprises back in August. So let's tie it all together. So Uranus stationed retrograde at 14 degrees in Taurus on August 20th. And on the same day, Uranus was exactly trying to Mercury at 14 degrees in Virgo. Amazing. So there was a 1414 code that was activated back in August. Now we've reached September, which is a 14 universal month. Uranus is still at 14 degrees. And this number 14 is really indicative of so much that we've experienced, especially because it also lines up with the number 5. 14 reduces to 5. 2021 reduces to 5. 5 is the shift number. It faces left, it faces right, it sits on a rocker, it's very open, it's very flexible. And so the shift from Uranus stationing retrograde happened at 14 degrees Taurus. Then on the 6th and 7th of September, we have the Virgo new moon at 14 degrees Virgo, which is where Mercury was, 14 degrees Virgo, when Uranus stationed retrograde on August 20th. So yeah, we had the same spot activated by the Virgo new moon that Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, was on August 20th when Uranus stationed retrograde. So there's a lot of this point, this 14 degree point and 14 degree month in September is so vital to understanding why the news cycle has really ramped up, because 14 governs media. 14 governs everything to do with the scribe. That's what the ancients called 14. So news, publications, anything that's online, right? It also, of course, governs books, publishing, anything media related. So this is an extraordinary activation of this number. And the triggering of surprising developments as a result of this number cannot be denied at this point. And this is why Astro-Numerology, as opposed to separating astrology and numerology, is so important, because we do need to look at both the degree numbers and the astrological placement of the planets and look at how those numbers, those degree numbers, coincide with the unfolding developments. So since we have this activation of the number 14, the scribe, info, data coming through, the integration of the data, the integration of this tremendous transformation is basically asking us to decide how we are going to respond to this energy of change, of shifting, of moving to a place where the unexpected is feeling like a blessing because it's extricating us from what is rooted and has been rooted for so long. So how is it that we can address change in the most graceful way possible? So to keep us from getting sidetracked, from getting upset, unhinged, lost, confused, what is most important in these times of change? And from my perspective, that would be coming to a place of stillness where we feel that sense of inner peace. And the number 5 represents the 5 senses. So stillness exists in the spiritual dimension beyond the 5 senses. And this spiritual dimension is incredibly subtle. It's an energetic experience that goes beyond, it's the sensitive side of the 5 senses. So you can access it through the 5 senses, but it is beyond what it is we attribute to touch and smell and feeling, etc. So if you want to experience that subtlety, that stillness, and who you truly are, you have to shift from the data, the info that's coming through. The 14 is about that incredible news cycle, that incredible amount of information that is online, whether it's social media or websites, it's everywhere. And so we need to go beyond that and experience something that is extraordinary, that is really filled with a sense of awe, of love. And finding that stillness is actually not that difficult. You're most likely really familiar with those spiritual realms, even if it's just for brief moments, right? So the subtle realm is very undervalued and overlooked by our mind. Our mind likes staying busy. So Uranus, 14 degrees, Uranus rules the higher mind, which is the mind that accesses our genius. And most people don't really take the time to cultivate where they are in that place where stillness and inspiration comes through, where you're just being and listening. And that's really what it is. It's falling into that place of the silence. And you can experience that stillness even when you're active. And that's really what the code for September and the Uranus code, which started this whole thing in August, that's what the 14 is asking. The 14-5 is a very active number. And so this is why there have been such rapid developments in August. So many unexpected, doubling up in September with the number. And so the pivot point has been reached. The vibrational shift is here. And in order to experience that stillness, even in the midst of all that activity, your relationship to activity itself has to actually undergo a shift. The ego cannot exist when you are just being present. In that state of stillness, you totally surrender the ego. And what maintains the ego is mostly the mental activity. It's interesting, I remember when I was young and a kid, and you would say when somebody's a little, out of it, cuckoo, whatever, you'd go like this. And that's really the washing machine going over and over and over your mind, regurgitating the past. That's really what that symbol is. And so most people think they're choosing what they do, when actually their ego is the one making the choices for them. They go along with that voice in their head, which is regurgitating the past, never questioning what's going through the head, what's going through that ego-driven voice. And you could really say that it's a sense of imbalance, really, because it gives you that sense of control that you're running the show when you're listening to that voice, when in actuality it is the most primitive part of yourself that is making all those decisions. And so this is why we have so much pain and suffering in the world, because it's ego-driven action. But thankfully, the events unfolding so rapidly now are also opening up pathways in us so that we can do much more than this. We can have action that is born from stillness. You don't need to indulge in that craziness, right? And sometimes it's not, I'm saying it's craziness, but it's more about the incessant nature of the mental voice that keeps going, the thoughts that keep going. And 14.5 is a case in point in terms of switching things up with fun and laughter and humor. 14.5 governs humor and governs laughter. And laughter releases that stuck energy. It opens you up to joy. It is very, very healing to laugh and to smile. So you know how to listen to that still, small voice within. You do it much of the time. However, you may not be necessarily free of that voice in your head. I certainly am not saying that I am. And that's how I know about it, because, sometimes we still think we are that voice, that it reflects who we are, right? And we often believe it. So consider in September to align yourself with that stillness, to align yourself with grace. To be still, we need to stop a lot of the activity that we're used to just naturally, habitually going right into, right? Whether it is something practical, like what we're eating, or whether it is what we're focusing on when we're trying to create something, right? So when we look for that stillness, we have to turn toward it. We literally have to tune into it. We have to make a commitment to it. And eventually we will be in that place where all our activity actually arises from that place. So here's the thing. Your divinity, who you really are, is experienced in silence. The silence of just being. And the paradox is, for this to happen, actual silence is not necessary, but mental silence is. So to experience who you truly are, your divine self, mental activity is what needs to stop. So this means you're not focused on the thoughts that are going through your mind, but you're focused on the subtle spiritual dimensions of life, which connect you with everything around you. So that's where your divine self lives. So how do you change your relationship to action itself? After all, life is very active these days. We have a 5 universal year. Now we're in this 14-5 universal month. Action is definitely part of our life. And the thing is, usually our action is directed by the ego. And of course, you're probably not going to experience stillness when that's the case. Once the ego really has you captured, it's pushing, it's judging, it's hurrying everything. It's doing other negative things. And so those pull you out of that stillness. But there is another way. There is another possibility. And that's to come out of activity and see it as a flow of the day. This is such an incredible moment to birth everything from that place of stillness where you surrender to the flow of life. So this is the shift of consciousness. This is it. This is what's being born. This is the 5 shift for 2021, the year of truth and joy. This is it. This is the freedom that we're seeking, is to birth everything from that stillness and vibrate to that, so your life really is filled with vibrant light. So how do you do that? Well, you really have to be totally aware of your thoughts, number 1. Number 2, you must gain enough distance from those thoughts to have choice around whether you're going to follow them or not. And this is really key. That distance is key. That's the observer in you, right? That's the divine self in you. able to create that space, right? Just like you create a sense of protection around you in any form, you have the ability to create space before you make choices. So you're not working on unconscious programming that is literally, and here I am again making that sign, the unconscious programming is what will pull you right back into that habitual pattern of listening to that inner voice that is regurgitating, right? So you must gain enough distance from your thoughts to have choice around whether to believe them, to follow them, or not to follow them. And third, you have to have some experience of that stillness to know how rewarding the stillness is. Why else would you even try to extricate yourself from the voice in your head if you don't know how wonderful it feels? So what do we need to make this happen? Well, fortunately, Saturn comes to the rescue. Saturn square Uranus, the transit of 2021, because it goes on all year. So Uranus is the planet that rules Aquarius in the new Aquarian age, the 2000-year age that we're moving rapidly into now. And Saturn, the planet of effort and responsibility, is currently square to Uranus, and the square creates tension. So how do you manifest a change? Well, it requires effort. So Saturn to the rescue, you need to exert effort and you need to be motivated. And so that's a key. Now, we all know that suffering can be a big motivator, but it isn't enough. Suffering isn't enough to get you to stop listening to the voice in your head. You have to experience a taste of what is possible, that feel-good sense, right? So you have to know that there's another way to live, but you need to experience that first, not just have someone tell you about it. So fortunately, experiencing this stillness, this grace, doesn't really require a lot. You can literally do that at any point in time. There just has to be an intention and a willingness to do it. Any form of meditation will allow you to experience the stillness. Beautiful music, meditational music, meditation, of course, walking in nature, breathing in air, being grateful. These can all create that stillness rapidly within a split second. And so this is it. This is happening right now. This new human, this new way of being is being birthed. It doesn't happen overnight. It hasn't been happening overnight. It's been going on. I'm sure you realize that. So learning to be in that stillness is helping you make high vibrational choices. It's helping you be open, like the number 5, right? Willing to put in the effort. And basically, you're training your brain to be different than the default setting. That default setting has been in place for eons. And the shifts now are so profound that the release from those thought streams are much easier than they have ever been before. And when I say shifts, I mean the craziness going on, right? We all know what that is. This is truly, remarkably helping to extricate us from that paradigm, from that default, right? We really need to get out of the default setting. We need to change that station, and it's happening now. And 5 is the number of change, 14 is the number of change, Uranus is the planet of change. These changes can occur through repetition, through practice. And fortunately, Saturn is square to Uranus. As I said, squares are never to be feared. They are literally creating the tension for us to sit up in our seats and get the ball rolling. Just like there's tension in music when you want a chord to resolve, the same thing happens in life. So it makes us excited. It makes us ready to take a leap, to really do something in order to bring the desired result. So practice, repeat. All habits, good or bad, are created through repetition. And that's really good news, because good habits can be created just as easily as bad habits. So Remember to love your life into being. Love is the foundation of all life. Love is being alive. And that is already known to you. You know this. Love is in your heart. You are born of love. You are blessed. So give love your attention, and that will also take you right into that beautiful stillness. Nourish your soul in that stillness of love. And nourish your soul too by knowing your own soul code, your divine code of life, the code you were born with. It's so helpful to know what you're here to do in order to grow, in order for your soul to explore herself or himself in this lifetime. To explore your code, go to the free masterclass I created for you at starcodeclass.com. It'll tell you all about your purpose, your destiny, what your numbers mean, your astrology, the degree numbers. It's a really fun course, and it'll introduce you to your own Astro-Numerology. So enjoy that free masterclass at starcodeclass.com and have an incredible September. Enjoy this energy. Really let it allow you to surrender and go with the flow. Lots of love.